Awesome. We are recording. So let's just start a quick introduction to Luis. So I met Luis many, many years ago. I don't even remember in which event, but I was one of the United States Spiritist Federation, one of the big events, and we both travel somewhere. You travel probably from Florida, and I was from New York. So then I re-encounter with you. I met you again when I was working as a practitioner, volunteer in conscious living many years ago, 2017. Yeah. So we keep meeting each other, and it's a blessing to be able to be in contact with you, because I know how much you are dedicated, how much you study, and it's important to all of us. And the ones that don't know, Luis moved and he lives in Orlando now. So it's not as close like coming from Weston. It's like further. But the blessings of technology is great that he was able to help us to listen to his words, even if he is not physically here. So I'm going to read a little bit of his bio just for you guys to be a little bit more, know a little bit more on Luis. So Luis was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, as well myself, one of the most beautiful cities in the planet. Yeah. Not partial at all. And Luis moved to the United States, where he began his journey in Spiritism. Due to his vast knowledge in science, he became a very good facilitator of Spiritism in both languages, in Portuguese and in English. So Mr. Lima is a renowned lecturer in the Spiritist movement and participates in local and national seminars, events, all year around. So, Luis, thank you so much for being here with us. And I will just remove this. So hopefully you can see us a little bit better.
Yeah, I see you guys, yeah.
Awesome. We can hear you. So,
okay, great.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I take it from here, right? Well, it's
yes.
It sounds a little bit of a joke when you come into a Spiritist center and say, life goes on. You go like, that's no news at all. What is this guy gonna talk about? What is he gonna say that I don't know? Well, the reason for this talk is we as Spiritists, we know life goes on. We know a lot more than that, actually. However, we are inserted into a context of a completely materialistic society. So it's easy to mix concepts. It's easy to mix ideas. And you know, throughout the years, doing lectures in different places at different times, we can feel that things are getting mixed up. So that's the purpose of trying to establish what life goes on really means for us. So we're going to have to compare what other people, other belief systems, and what our society in general thinks of what this means, life goes on, versus ours, because we don't see eye to eye. We don't see the same things they do. So one interesting thing is, if you look at the slide here, that's a research from, it's fairly new. It's over a 5-year span. So it's not a point in time between 2017 and 2022, as you see on the lower left. And they went out there asking the question on the top, do you believe in life after death? Very simple question, straightforward answer, yes or no. Well, if you look at the statistics in the bottom rectangle, the countries or the places in purple, they are very high, above 90%. Those are the Islamic countries. So they have this very strong belief, and we know that there is something after life, and you know, they believe this for good. Now, one striking thing for a lot of people, including Brazilians, is when you look at the statistics for Brazil, 56.7%, so roughly a little bit more than half of the country, believes in life after death. However, in the United States, it's much higher. It's 68%, which is surprising. It's not kind of expected in the first, at the first glance, you're like, what? So it is strange. So in order to dig in and find out a little bit more about this, I'm not a researcher. You can see here on the lower right, it was from November of 2021. So not too old, I would say, 4 or 5 years. It's something okay. So there was a question there, and the first question was, and now this is only in the US because we're trying to, pull out how that 68% came about. So do you believe in heaven and hell? So 61% said, yes, I believe in both. 26% said, I believe in heaven, but not hell. 13% said heaven only, and 1% hell only, which is interesting. So on those 26% people that said, I don't believe in heaven and I don't believe in hell, a second question was asked. And the question is, do you believe in life after death? So the answer was 65% said no. 27% said yes, and the other 8% either didn't respond or didn't know what to say, which is also striking because how come you don't believe in heaven or hell, and you don't believe in life after death, right? So for those who said yes, I believe in life after death, another question was asked, and the question is, explain what it means to you, life after death. 42% couldn't answer. So almost half, they couldn't answer. They couldn't explain why or what means life after death for them. 21% said the spirit or energy, because I'm using two words because it depends on the belief system. So the spirit or energy goes on, keeps on living. 17% believe in reincarnation. 11% said, after this life, it's all peace, nothing else. And 17% said, the spirit or the energy goes back to the universe, and that's it. So when you look at this, one thing wasn't said when I presented this to you. The first question and all subsequent questions, if I ask you, for example, right now, do you believe in heaven and hell? I'm not saying what heaven and hell is. I'm not defining it. You are defining on your answer. That's why we have this complicated statistics here, because not everybody has the same definition for heaven and hell. And if we are in a society that can't really explain heaven, hell, life after death, and all of that, it might compromise our beliefs if we don't pay attention to that. So that's the reason why we're bringing this study over here, so we can absolutely make sure that we understand what we should understand. So death is this complicated thing in our society, and at times we will say in our society, not on a spiritual center, we will say to other people, well, life goes on, and so and so and so. And we usually say this in situations that are not very good. Usually it has to do with the death of a person or a loved one or somebody that you knew. So it brings this idea of a social context. Within this social context, when you say life goes on, you're trying to bring comfort for the loss of the person. You're trying to avoid revolt. So that's the goal when you say something like this, life goes on, and so, outside the spiritual center. Now, when we say life goes on, within the spiritist paradigm, it means something completely different. It means the opportunity to once again, because we see death all the time throughout our lifetime, we see death, and we know that death is out there all the time. Death, as science explains. And it's a great opportunity for reflection and liberation. Liberation in the sense that, well, that person is now, is no longer here. So it is detached from all the matter and the problems that we have when incarnated. So our concept as spiritists do not match the context of being in a society that is materialistic. So we need to separate things. We need to block the influence for those concepts on ours, because it will create a problem. And the reason why it's so difficult in our society to talk about death is for two reasons. It has to do with the belief system or the culture that you are, and it has to do with science calls the duality, life and death. We're going to take a look at each one of them. So what we are going to see here in the next few minutes is not spiritism, it's our society. We're looking at the society as citizens, for example, as citizens of the world, whatever you are, and whatever culture you believe in. So let's look first at culture and then this duality, life and death. If you look at the belief system, that depends on the country. Within the same country, you can have different cultures, especially large countries like, US, Canada, Brazil, Russia. You have several cultures within the same country. So depending on the culture, that could mean some of these words that we are presenting here. For example, so some people will associate death with pain, some others with weakness. You can't mean in the sense that we cannot stop it. There's nothing we can do about it. I'm impotent when it comes to death. Fear for some, humiliation and defeat for others. Humiliation and defeat is interesting in the medical profession. When you are in the very beginning of your career and you lose your first patient, maybe your first few patients, there's this general sense of defeat. I was defeated. I wasn't able to do anything, regardless of your knowledge. If you graduated with, first in your class, it doesn't matter. So, in the first years, the doctors or those in the medical profession, they have to be very careful so it doesn't turn them off in pursuing their career. But it's a complicated thing because our culture induces these people to feel like this. In the book Heaven and Hell, Allan Kardec is going to address this. So this is what it says. He's talking about the discomfort of death, the problem on talking about death. To worry about death, therefore, arises from an insufficient idea about the future life. We don't know what's coming. But it also denotes the need to stay alive. Nobody wants to die. We all want to stay alive. And the belief that destruction of the body is not the end of everything. So there's this fear of destruction of the body. Additionally, it is triggered by the secret longing for the survival of the soul, still veiled in uncertainty. So all of these things are factors or they play a role in our society in trying to avoid speaking about death. It's one of these subjects nobody's ever happy to talk about. Because of these things, it becomes this, taboo, so we don't want to talk about it. Those are some of the reasons that Allan Kardec brings to us, okay? Now, we are going to take another look, a look at the other side of this, which is the duality between life and death, which is defined by science. How does science see this duality, life and death? Well, if you go to the number one source of research for medical terms, which you see the logo right here, so Webster's Dictionary, the Medline Plus, specific to medical terms. And again, this is a number one source. So I'm going to pull out from this dictionary the definition of life and the definition of death. So let's put them here. I'm going to start with death. what is the definition? This is pure science. This is medical profession. What is the definition of death? Well, and we read it to you. The irreversible cessation of all vital functions, especially as indicated by permanent, important, permanent stoppage of the heart, respiration, and brain activity. So far, so good. It really is. That's what it is. I don't think anybody would disagree that this defines death as we know it. This is science defining. However, there's a problem. At the very end, they put a colon, the end of life. So, okay, so now death is the end of life. If you tell me that death is the end of life, you have to define life. Otherwise, it makes no sense. So, from the same dictionary, let's see what the definition of life is. Definition of life: the quality that distinguishes a vital and functional plant or animal from a dead body. And you look at this and you go, what? Yeah, that's their definition. They can't define life. Science cannot define life. And the reason is, you cannot define life because life is immaterial. And it's outside their realm. Life is immaterial. What is the material about life is the physical body, which is just part of it. So they cannot define it. It's outside the scope of work of science. So if you cannot define life, automatically you cannot define death. Automatically. So whatever definition of death is not complete because the definition of life is not complete. So you see, those two things are events in a sequence. So one only exists when the other ceases and vice versa. So if you cannot define one, you cannot define any of them. That's why it is so difficult, so complicated, and so challenging, why not say that, for science to define life. They can't. And they can't define death. We're going to explore this a little bit more. Us, Spiritists, do we have a black and white definition of death and a black and white definition of life? Or do we go like science? Yeah, more or less this, more or less that. Well, why don't we take a look at it, right? For science, okay, when you look at the biological life, and that's all they believe. They do not see spiritual life. They only believe in the red part, biological life. If you're going to study life from the scientific point of view, life as we know, is formed of cells in a body. There are two ways that you can study these cells. You can study these cells. You can study the body as a whole or the cells in the body, which are just part of the body. If you decide to study the cells only, not the whole body, just the cells, are these cells within the organism? For example, I want to, this particular part of my arm here on the skin, I want to study those cells. Are those cells still in my body, or did I take them out and put under culture? Because depending on how it is studied, it's a different view. It changes everything. If it's still in the organism, it's one approach. If it's in a culture, petri dish, it's a completely different approach. And the idea of bringing cells from a physical body into a petri dish is what, and merit to science, of course, is what allow us to have certain lab exams, genetic regeneration, transplants. These things are only possible because we learned how to take cells out of a physical body, put in a petri dish with enzymes and keep them living so we can understand them. So there are different ways to study life. Like I said, a body and cells and what kind of cells, it makes it complicated because you have too many options there. It's difficult to define life that way. One interesting thing is in this book here, The Quantum Self. This is written by Dr. Dana Zohar. Her story is very interesting. In her early days, decades ago, when she was, you can see her bio here really quick. She's got a degree in physics and philosophy, and she started bridging this idea between science and spirituality. So she started early in her days writing articles about it, bridging spirituality and medicine or science in general. And she was getting, her reputation was very good throughout the years until she wrote this book. This book is, I think it's from 2010, if I'm not mistaken. So 2001, I'm sorry, 2001. So in this book, there's one phrase. This book is written for the medical profession. There's one phrase in this book that cost her, and she made a lot of enemies within her profession. One phrase. The one phrase is this: at the subatomic level of elementary particles. Okay, what is that? Think of an atom that once we thought it was the minimum possible element of matter. Now we know that the atom is this gigantic thing because there's too many other subatomic level particles, electrons, protons, and quarks, and hadrons, and it goes on and on. So at the subatomic level of elementary particles, there is no death in the sense of a permanent loss. What does it mean? It means, for example, you don't lose an atom of carbon. It doesn't disintegrate. You don't lose it. It's not stolen by an alien. That cannot be happening. You cannot lose an atom or atoms of oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, whatever. You cannot. So this sense that we carry about death, that is this permanent loss, the person will never come back. It does not apply to the subatomic level, which is very interesting because that challenges science again in trying to define life and death. It became a lot more complicated. That's why she got too many enemies because of this. With time, technology allowed science to learn a lot more. Things changed. So now she's okay again. She's got she earned her reputation back. But can you imagine this? It's very interesting. Even for us spiritists, you look at this and you say, wow, that's a nice concept, nice view of the situation. So science is trying to define death and life. We couldn't do it black and white, not yet. How about us, spiritists? Do we have a black and white definition of life, black and white definition of death? We do. We do. Life starts right here. When several sperms are around the egg, the outer membrane, one of them and only one will be able to penetrate the egg. There's a physical path to go from the outer membrane into the center. There's a physical path. So quotes please, like this sperm has to run towards the center, okay? This will take this sperm time, and it takes 4 minutes. It takes 4 minutes to get from the outer membrane into the center of the egg. Once it gets to the center of the egg, then they are going to melt, both of them, the nucleus of the egg and the nucleus of the sperm, which is also a process. It is not a snap of fingers. This process takes 15 minutes. 15 minutes. So it's a process. Okay, while this is happening, while the fusion of the protoplasms is happening, the incarnating spirit, let's try to define within this context, what is the incarnating spirit? Is a spirit that will one day become a baby as a result of this. this incarnating spirit has no body until this fusion is completed. When it is completed, this incarnating spirit will launch its fluidic tide into the new formed egg or one cell zygote. It's like, it's an analogy, please. It's like the spirit, the incarnated spirit says, oh, okay, this is mine now. Let me take possession of this thing. So it, quotes, please, takes possession by launching its fluidic tide. This process here is called conception, and that's where life starts for us, Spiritists. It's a black and white definition of beginning of life. There is no discussion. Think about this. If we don't have a black and white definition of the beginning of life, defining abortion is a problem. Because you may think it's a certain number of hours or weeks after this, or you may think it's before. So it's a problem. Why do we have so many difficulties in, having everybody believe the same thing about abortion? Because not everybody sees the beginning of life on the same point. Because science cannot define that. And our society goes by what science says. Spiritism has a very clear answer. So, for you, Spiritists, for us, Spiritists, if you tell me, but what happens after 3 nanoseconds after the fusion? If you do something, if you interfere, you're killing. What about if I do anything about 12 weeks after? You're killing. Okay? So we have a very clear definition of life, the beginning of life. So life for us starts on the conception, then we go through a whole lifetime, we discarnate, we go into what we call the errant stage, we incarnate again, we discarnate, and so on. So we alternate between incarnation, being incarnated, and being at the errant stage. Let's take a closer look at this passage here from one to another. This is not a snap of fingers. This is a process. And it's a process that's not very simple. For us, incarnated, looking at the process of the passage, I'm not gonna use the word death so we don't complicate things. From our perspective, our meaning us, incarnated spirits, when we look at the passage, we have one vision. For those on the other side of life, discarnate spirits, they see things in a different way. It's like this. Let's see, you and I are talking, okay? You are on one side of the table and I'm on another side of the table. I'm looking at you face to face. Then I look past you and I say, oh, look at that. There's a nice frame on the wall. And you look past me and say, no, it's a door. You see, we're not talking apples and apples. Because if we're not looking at the same thing from the same point, the outcome is going to be different. That's the case here. They meaning the discarnate spirits, they're not looking from the same perspective that we are. So they see this process completely different than we see. So when does death happen here? Well, we're going to have to take a better look at this process because there's a lot of things here to be considered. Let's just talk about understand the history of how we define death. When do you define, if you go back to the cavemen, you can go back, 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. When would you say somebody is dead? When this person, let's say the guy fell on the floor, he hit the floor, and he doesn't move. And you gotta wait a little bit. Then you wait 2 hours, and you personally declare this guy is dead, somebody who is with you says, no, 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 let's give him more time. Let's see if something happens. Let's give him another day until tomorrow morning. So you see, you cannot define death by looking at the body sitting on the floor. We used to do that in the past. You cannot define death like this. It's not a clear black and white definition. With time, we understood that there's something inside the body that makes noises like tum, tum, tum. So we learned something new. If the guy is laying on the floor, and I put my ear on his chest, I'm going to listen to this. At a certain point, I don't hear anymore. And then I'm going to use this to define that this guy is dead. And then I put my ear in there, and I go up and I say, this guy is dead. Somebody else that is with me says, well, let me see, let me hear myself. They put their ears on the chest and said, no, there's still something there. Because it depends on the person, the ability that we all have for hearing. You see, it's not a clear-cut definition. I can't use this as a definition. So I don't hear the heart anymore. That's no good. And then we go into the next level where we found there's this beautiful instrument, which is still based on the same thing, trying to hear the chest, but with a lot more precise, a lot more precision. The instrument is precise, so I can put the stethoscope on my ears, and I place the tip on the chest of the guy, and I can hear even very, very, very lower sounds, but I still can hear it because the instrument is made for that purpose. But at one point, I'm going to say I don't hear anything anymore. Somebody that is sitting by my side says, well, give me this, and I'm going to hear myself. They put on their ears, put on their chest, and they say, oh, but there's still something here. Because they have a better hearing system than I do, or vice versa. So we cannot use this as a definition for death. The stethoscope, I put it on the chest and I don't hear anything. Doesn't work. Then we started using more technology, and we found something very interesting. The heart can be, the activity on the heart can be measured with a much, much, much more precise and advanced instrument, which is the electrocardiogram. Well, what is this? It's basically the same thing. It's reading information from a beating from the heart when it beats. Instead of placing the information through my ears like this stethoscope, it puts on a screen that has a pencil doing like this. And then when you have this moving and then it stops, like it flatlines, for me to say, that's it, this guy's dead, my eye has to be good enough to see that it's completely flatlined. So I will say, this guy's dead. There's a flat line on the paper. Somebody who is with me comes close and says, no, 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 no. There's still a little bit of a thing in there. There are little waves. So that's not, again, a clear-cut definition for death, because it depends on who is reading the information. You see, it gets complicated, right? Then we went to the next level. We found out that the heart is not the very center of everything. The very center of everything is just the brain. So we came up with a similar thing that the electrocardiogram was to the heart. We came up with the electroencephalogram, which is the same thing to the brain. So I'm going to measure brain activity and put on a piece of paper or on a screen in more modern equipment. So you're going to see, waves coming up and down, and then at one point it's going to flatline. When it flatlines, that's it. Well, somebody else can say, but I still see a little wave. Plus, you have the precision of the equipment itself. There might be showing you flatline because you cannot draw very little waves or very, small amplitude waves. So we cannot use that as a reference for death. It's getting complicated. We already tried 5 things. Complicated to define death. And then we found that there's more. That when the brain dies and stops, parts, we're not going to get into in details, but parts that work with the brain also have activity. And then we defined, and that's the present current definition of death by science, when all these parts, which is called the encephalus, when it stops, the activity stops there, then the person is dead. That's the current standard for science. When there's no activity here, you can write a death certificate. That's the current standard in all our societies throughout the world. Okay. Nice. Everybody agrees. We shake hands. We're all friends. And then somebody goes into surgery. They die. They flatline. And then the person comes up and says, oh, I saw everything. The doctor said this and said that. And there was this equipment on the room. And the lady on the left side, the nurse on the left side was doing this. And the nurse on the right side was doing that. What do you do? Death was defined previously to that. What do we do now with near-death experience from the scientific point of view? They do not accept this as of yet, but it blows their definition of death, regardless if they believe or not. That's not the point. But it blows their definition of death. There's a very interesting movie. It's the original movie is from 1990. There was a remake in 2017 called The Flatliners. Flatliners is Julia Roberts, Kevin Bacon. They were young, their first years in career. It's a don't miss it. Don't miss it. Go see it or rent to see it. Flatliners. The 2017, the original version, 1990, is gears towards the spiritual side of life. The remake in 2017 is very sci-fi. So it's completely different. But look at it. Look at 1990. At the end of the movie, you're going to say, wow, the movie was spiritist all the time, and I didn't know. And I bet the artist didn't know either. So watch it. Flatliners. But this blows the definition of death, for the current definition of death for science. How can you keep going after this? Complicated, right? It's challenging for them. So with time, it's becoming more difficult to define life. It was just easier when a guy is laying on the floor and that's it. You won't move anymore. And that's it. Let's go. Keep going. It was a lot easier than now. Interesting, because at one point, there's going to have to be a consideration within the scientific realm for cases of near-death experiences. Of course, it's being studied all over the place. There are people who devote their lives and dedicate all their time for this. But it's a beautiful study. In this book, The Workers of the Life Eternal by Spirit André Luiz, on chapter 11, the name of the chapter is New Friends. There's a very interesting case. In this book, André Luiz goes out with a discarnate, and he goes out with a team of discarnate spirits to help spirits that are about to discarnate, but knowingly they will have a hard time discarnating. It's going to be a difficult death, if you will. So they go to help these people. One of them is this guy that you see the name here, Cavalcanti. So Cavalcanti, but first you have to know who he is. So Cavalcanti is this guy that early in his life, he was married, had a family, and he decided to abandon the family altogether and devote 100% of his time to the church, Catholic Church. So, and that's what he did. So from early days in his married life, he, left everything behind, left his wife and family and so on. And throughout his life, he was this very committed Catholic man and made friends within the church with several different priests and so on. one priest in particular was a very, very close friend. So he's about to die because he had he underwent 2 or 3 surgeries in the digestive system, and at one point it's just time to go. So he was in his last legs in the hospital, and he feels it. He said, I just passed this last surgery, but I don't feel it's going to do anything. This is him to himself, and I think I'm going to die. So he calls the doctor and says, listen, I want you to get in contact with this priest. This priest is my very good friend. Bring him over here. So the doctor does that. The priest shows up, and Cavalcante says, you need to do me a favor. I'm about to die. I'm not going to last too much longer, but I need you to bring my wife here because I need to ask for forgiveness. So the priest starts, going around and nah, don't do this. He wasn't straightforward. And the reason is his wife had been dead for some years already. He didn't know. And he wanted to ask for forgiveness. How come? Not going to happen. So when this, and Andre Luiz and the discarnate team, they're all watching all of this. Then the doctor says, listen, after this last surgery, he's not going to make it. He's doing not very good. He's about to die. So let's abbreviate his suffering by applying the injection. And he calls the compassion injection. Let's do that. So the Andre Luiz team hears that and say, no, we can't let it happen because things have to follow their natural course. It has to follow the natural course. So what happens? The team starts to, try to influence psychically, of course, the doctor. So he gives more time because Cavalcante has to go through more. And he is holding on. Cavalcante is holding on. Although he was a very religious man, he wanted forgiveness. So he's fighting like crazy with his body to stay alive. And things are not very good. It's getting worse. So the team, the discarnate spirits, they come up with a plan. And the plan is, if we are able to interfere physically in his body, we can provoke tiny small cuts in the intestine. So he's going to bleed. By bleeding, he's going to be less capable of control his body, meaning his spirit will be freer, more detached. And then we can bring his wife in spirit, and she will talk to him in spirit out of the body. So he can ask for forgiveness. He won't know the difference. You won't know the difference. That's what they do. So they provoke these tiny cuts. It gets worse, and so he's about to ask for forgiveness. Then, by having the cuts, he got a lot worse from the medical, clinical point of view. The doctor said, "That's it. I'm not gonna let this guy suffer anymore. That's not right." It's a medical opinion. So he said, "Here's the injection." So he applies the injection. When Cavalcante takes the injection, what happens? The body now is subject to a different chemistry altogether. So his spirit is still not dead. So his spirit is now not able to control the body to end life properly. The spirit has to end life properly. And that's the only way to do this properly, without interference with anyone else. So it has to happen by himself. And it doesn't, because now he cannot control the body. So he stays on this on and off all the time for 20 hours, suffering like crazy to be able to finally discarnate. And the team of discarnate spirits trying to help couldn't do anything. because it's like you seize the connection between spirit and body, almost seize, because they're still attached. So for us spiritists, discarnation, not death. We don't use the term death. That's a scientific name. Discarnation is exactly the other way around from birth or incarnation, start of the incarnation. When the last little tiny, line of fluidic tie detaches from the body. So do we have a clear definition of death? Yes. Anything that happens prior to that is euthanasia or suicide if the person does it themselves. Very clear definition. Anything that happens after that is just a composite of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon. It doesn't mean anything. So you see, the fact that we have a very clear definition of death and a very clear definition of life makes us be able to establish what is right and what is wrong in that context. That is not the case in our society in general. So this is a great example. I urge you to read. If you don't want to read the whole book, read this chapter. Very interesting. Okay, so now we have two sides, spiritism and science. For science, which goes by the materialist paradigm, death is a destination. For spiritism, it's not. It's a point of reference. It's a point of inflection. Very different. So there's a gap between the definition of death by science and the definition of discarnation by us. To straighten this gap, there are some tools that we can find out there. So here are some of them. Parapsychology, mediumship, near-death experiences, which is being studied in as a great deal for in these days, studies of the perispirit and past life regressions. All these things are in place, trying to make these two reconcile. For now, they are not reconciled. So death is one thing, discarnation is another thing. Okay. Now, I want to end by inviting you to follow my thought here. Say you go to a movie tonight, and the movie you're gonna watch. Think about this. If you go to one of these thrillers, say you go to a thriller because you like it. On a thriller movie, typically in the first 5 or 10 minutes, somebody gets murdered, for example, right? And then you spend the next 2 hours trying to find who the murderer is. And at times, if it's what is considered a good movie, throughout the movie, you're gonna change opinion several times. In the beginning, you're gonna say to yourself, "Oh, I know who did this. It was Mr. A." 10 minutes later, you're gonna say, "Well, it cannot be Mr. A because of this. Now I think it's Mr. B." Later on, it's Mr. C. Later on, it's D. Later on, it's B again. So you get thrown in different directions depending on how the movie goes. So, at the end, and maybe 1 or 2 minutes from the end, that's when you're gonna know who was actually the murderer. So here you are. You're buying your ticket. You're gonna go into the movie. As you are buying your ticket, an old friend comes out and says, "Oh, I just watched the movie. Great movie." And he comes to you and say, "Are you going to watch the movie?" And you say, "Yeah, I'm going to watch the movie. I just got my ticket." And he will say, "Great movie. The murderer is the butler." Does it change your perspective on seeing the movie, watching the movie? Completely. Because now you're in a total state of confusion. First, you can say, "Well, I'm going to buy the idea that the murderer is the butler." So from that point on, in every single scene that the butler appears on the screen, you're going to find motives for him to be the one. Second, he's trying to pull my leg. It could be anybody except the butler. And then, in every single scene that the butler shows up, you're going to tell yourself, you see, it cannot be him because of this and this and this and this. Or, number three, you're going to say, I'm totally confused. I don't know who to believe or what to believe. And I'm lost more than before. Because you're not believing what it says. This is us. This is us going to the movie and having this great friend coming from the beyond. Here are some of them telling us how it is, how it ends, telling us what we need to know with certainty. So we have all these spirits, Emmanuel, Andre, Luiz, Joanna, the Angelis, Hermas, Dufo, all of them coming from the beyond, telling us this is what it is. Remember, their view from the discarnate point of view is different than ours, incarnate. They are telling us what they see on their side. So now we are the lucky ones that we have two views on the same thing, rather than having only one view on one situation. So when we say life goes on, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. And what complicates everything is the word death. That is not the same thing as discarnate or discarnation. That's what I wanted to bring to you, to present to you. Thank you very much. I'll be here for questions, suggestions, comments. Thank you.
Very good. Let me turn on a little bit more light here. Okay, so first, let's remove your presentation. So
yeah, let me take it out. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I have you bigger here so they can see you better.
Okay, here I am.
Okay, very good. So first of all, thank you. Thank you very much for the lecture, for the scientific topics that could connect and help us to make this understanding that is important. And even for spiritists, it is difficult. So it's really good that you pinpoint to understand what is life for us and what is death, because a lot of people don't have this concept straight. They end up mixing up with some types of science. I'm talking about abortion. Like, oh, this country allows this, that country certain amount of days, the other certain amount of months. And for spiritists, it's very different. As you can say, it's just certain hours. And life is already there. So right now, I just would like to open up to our friends online. So I would like to know if any of you have any questions that you would like to ask, so we can take advantage, because Luiz is here with us. So if you have any questions and you would like to ask, this is the time. Unmute your microphone, raise your hand, and ask the question before I pass here to the group here in the present. Okay, Mark, go ahead. Ask your first question.
I have only one question, Luis. Can I use your material?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They have the copy. Angy has the copy.
It's that is fabulous. That is exceptional.
Thank you.
Really good. Really good. Love the research.
Yes, I love the way the slides go. You know,
Oh,
very
yeah.
modern. I love it. Very
Beautiful.
modern. Anyone online that would you like to ask a question to Luiz before we go here in the center? No? Very good. So, okay, Sonia, so go ahead.
I just want to thank Luiz because it was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Very well said and to the level of explanation that we can understand it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Very, very good. What about here? Any of you would like to ask a question about life goes on? What is death? What is life? He already explained, but let's go ahead. Yeah, so you want to ask a question, Leo?
Science.
Can you say a little bit louder? We have some kind of gypsy kings going wild here. Right below our place, there is a restaurant on a Tuesday night. Gypsy Kings is going wild. You have no idea. So it's not a fair competition with the band. So louder so he can hear you.
From a science, I am not that knowledgeable, but from a science point of view, the scientific point of view, there is a law. Okay, so we are energy. We are atoms, we are energy. And the energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Energy transforms. So even science, if we are energy, does not really think that it ends there. So I don't know if you know more or less what I'm talking about. So that they are not able to maybe define life and death, but in other parts that they've been doing research, they say, okay, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It transforms. So maybe we transform too. Did you hear me?
Could you hear her comments?
Some of it, yeah, about
Yes,
the atoms and
Leo, can you come closer because
yeah, it's too far. It has echo.
computer.
Okay. So I am just saying, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just saying from a scientific point of view, it's true that maybe that they do not have a very accurate definition of what life or death is. But in other works of scientific studies, there is a law, which I can't remember right now what the name is, but it says that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, that it transforms. And if we are, energy, because we are atoms, subatoms, and I don't know how many other things that I don't have enough knowledge about, that in other work, they are giving a definition for immortality, really. If we are energy.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. When you say energy is material. The spirit is not material. It's the intelligent principle. There is no common point between the intelligent principle and anything material. The intelligent principle comes from the spiritual principle. Anything matter comes from the material principle. They both come from God, but there are no common points between them. Energy is here, is material. That's why the famous E equals mc2 by Einstein means something that has mass, something physical, material, is also energy. This is not energy. Energy is a word on this side of things. On this side, we only have one thing, intelligent principle, which we also call spirit. So all transformations of matter and from atoms and recombination of atoms, molecules, it all happens here. Now, this is what happens here is controlled by what's in here. So, for example, if you are able to write down all the atoms and substances that compose the human body, let's just say this trillion atoms of carbon, this trillion atoms of oxygen, and so on and so on. If you get this and you put into a petri dish, nothing happens. They don't become life because they are still matter, but life depends on having a spiritual principle here. So this combination and recombination of atoms and molecules, they can happen as many times as you want. It does not affect here, the intelligent principle. So when science became aware of it at the very lowest level, which is quantum physics, that's what they study. The definition of quantum physics is the study of the structure of matter. So that's how they found that we have atoms, that under the atom you have protons, electrons, and neutrons, and under those you have more particles, and so on and so on. So, but all of these are physical. Nothing is an intelligent principle. Life is not here. Life is this, acting upon this. That's why they cannot define life, because they study this. Spiritism studies this. That's why Allan Kardec says science and spiritism, or spirituality, they have to go hand in hand. There is not a single spirit, not a single one of us, spiritists, that go to the lab for some experiences. As spiritists, we don't go to chemical labs, we don't go to physical labs. We use the results that science brought to us. That's why we depend on them. And they depend on us because we have the cause, the primary cause of all things. So you see, that's why it's complicated for them, because they're trying to define something that is beyond the scope of their study, just as it is for us to impossible to define God, because it's beyond our ability, which is here, intelligent principle, to define something that is greater than us. We can only define what's smaller than us, not greater.
There is sorry to cut you off, but there is a saying, a story actually, and I said the story here a few weeks ago, I believe, that a doctor went to the medium, Chico Xavier, and told him, I will find out about this spirit because I have a patient who is ready to die, and I will be right there, and I will be able to observe the spirit coming out of his body. Mm-hmm. And the doctor was in the surgery trying to revive the patient, heart open, and the patient actually died. And then he goes to Chico Xavier and says, this thing that you are saying, that the spirit comes out, it's not true, because I was there and I did not see the spirit coming out. And his heart was open. And then the Chico Xavier tells him, well, you are trying to catch the bird when the bird is already out of the cage. Basically explaining our spirit is not encapsulated inside the physical body. It is connected to it. But it's very difficult for science to understand something they cannot prove, they cannot see. It's like... That's why quantum physics drives the scientists crazy, because it's very difficult to prove.
Yeah,
it exists.
Our five senses can only sense what happens in a material world. We cannot see, view, hear, spirit.
Exactly. So, yes, John? Can you talk louder so he can hear?
I will talk very loud.
Okay.
You say the material world and the spiritual world are kind of separate, but it's not recently either. Kardec already said we're trying to explain something when we don't have enough knowledge. I bring this up now and again. We only know 5% of what the universe is comprised of. 95% is dark energy and dark matter, which simply could be the spiritual side that we don't know how to measure it or detect it. So when she says, what happens to this energy? You're saying, well, spirit is just different. It may be the same. When we understand what 95% of the universe is, it may have been there all the time. We just can't measure it.
Well, even the definition of universe is something all material.
No, but dark energy and dark matter may encompass everything. This is nothing new. Dark energy and dark matter is established. It's there. We just don't know how to measure it.
Yeah, you see, the names are not good because we don't have full knowledge. When you say dark matter, matter is matter. Dark energy is also matter.
That's the point. That you're saying, well, this is spiritual. We just can't understand it. Maybe in time we will. That's established. This is not a fact that I made up.
No, it is established dark matter, but
And dark energy,
what thing is like we don't know exactly what it is.
right?
It
Yeah.
exists,
Yeah.
but we don't know what it is. We
Right.
don't know how to fully define
Right.
it.
It could be the spiritual side that we're.
Yeah, and as we know, Kardec already mentioned, as science evolves, we evolve. So we have to embrace, we embrace both, but we have to understand difference between matter and spirit. They are
Yeah.
two different things.
But if we can't measure dark energy, and we can't measure dark matter, like he says, well, dark is not a good name. Of course it is, because we don't know what it is. That may be the spiritual side where 95% of the universe is made up of a universe which may have no bound.
It could be, but in the same point, we can go to the brain. We know that the human being brain, we don't know much about the brain. We know that we don't use the full capability of the brain. We use a certain portion of it. So there are so many things that we don't know yet. But, that's why lectures like this is important for us to start, like, it's food for thought. It's not nothing like
Yeah, absolutely. Food for thought, learning more, reading, absolutely.
and like we always say in Spiritism, the general word is, what is the general word that I always say here? It depends. It depends. It depends.
Mhm. Yeah.
It always depends. No one, if we all die together, it will depend on us, on our moral levels, on whatever we did of good or not that good, how we are going to wake up. And most of the time, we are not going to wake up together. Just because we physically die together, we are not going to wake up physically, spiritually together.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Any other comments? No? Juan, any
No.
questions? No?
Still.
Food for thought.
Food for thought.
I know a lot of concepts that are important for us to understand, but it was really, really good. And I appreciate it's important to have topics like this to help us, especially to understand where life starts when the topic of abortion is getting so powerful all over the world, not just in the U.S.
Abortion in one side, euthanasia on the other.
Oh, it's true. It is true. Euthanasia also, it's getting so strong. And the people don't understand the consequences because they just think about the physical. So if the physical is beyond repair, so it's an understanding that, okay, get rid of it and you end with the pain. But if they could understand the spiritual side, it would be different. That's true. That's awesome. So we are going to do now our prayer, and then we are going to have our passes that we are going to go through the passes. So, Luiz, I don't want to hold you to the passes in the end. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here. If you want to stay and see, feel welcome. But if you have to leave, thank you so much. We are just going to do the final prayer. And thank you so much for being here with us. It was very good. Our first online lecture person in the center.
That's good. Yeah, I'll stay for the prayer. Then I have to go.
Very good. Very good. So let's do our prayer. And then I ask the four of you that are sitting in the back just to move on because we are going to give the pass in the back chairs, okay? So God, our Mother and Father, thank you so much for bringing us here tonight. At this moment, we would like to ask the enlightened spirits to come close to all of us, helping us to fully receive the knowledge that our friend Luiz was able to bring to us. We ask that this good fluids, and we ask that the knowledge that maybe we were not able to assimilate it yet can remain within us. And through the night, when we go to sleep, we will be able to understand a little bit better. And most of all, to start studying more about the beginning of life and the end of life to the Spiritist point of view. And at this moment, we would like to say thank you to all the good spirits that were here with us, helping us to be connected, to understand what was said and passed to all of us. And we ask that the spirits come closer to the past givers that will be helping all the brothers and sisters here tonight to receive the healing passes, as well as our brothers and sisters online. And again, thank you so much to our friend Luiz for a great lecture. And we all wish you the best. And hopefully we can have you back soon, maybe in person. So be it. Luiz, thank you so much. Have a great, great night.
Thank you, guys. It was
Yes,
awesome.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So I'm going to stop recording. And so now